Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Red O'Loughlin on Talking Heads on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. We were supposed to be here last Thursday. A lot of things happened. Some events took over, and we weren't able to have last week, which would have been part 3 of 6 on pain control. However, same slides apply. We're just back everything up a week, and we're going to go ahead and charge for it. So today, let's go ahead and get started on get my slide up here as I can. Okay. Disclaimer, I'm a researcher. I'm not a doctor, never been associated with a pharmaceutical company. I fell in love with chemistry, literally my first love, long before I ever met my wife, which is now 55 years. Chemistry is something which I just found fascinating, as is statistics and a couple other things. But regardless, chemistry is something that I've always loved and enjoyed. And it wasn't until I got an invitation to Vietnam, so I never got a chance to practice my chemistry degree. But go ahead a few decades, and not long ago, 10 years ago, thereabouts, just about, my wife came down with chemistry, and I kind of went right back into that field to find what can I do to help my wife get through a lot of these side effects from the different drugs and things she was taking. And I renewed my interest in chemistry. Nowadays, I look at the human body at the cellular level. I look for cause and effect relationships. When this causes that, can I speed it up? Can I slow it down? Because when you treat a symptom, you're always going to be treating the symptoms as a Band-Aid. But when you treat a cause, you're actually fixing a problem, or you're taking something and making it whatever you want to have happen with it. And with pain, as with weight and a few other things, a lot of these things are so individual. You know, headaches, weight gain, lots and lots and lots of things are really an individual thing, and the responses vary. So with pain, we talked about the last couple of weeks. What is it? How does it get propagated through the body? And in reality, pain is a very complex. It's not only physiological, but it's also psychological. But the big thing is that it's an indication. It tells the body, tells our brain that something potentially dangerous can happen, a lot of harm. So the pain is there so we don't have that real level of danger or harm that could come about. So given that, let's move on. We talked about previously, when pain happens, there's some trauma in the body, doesn't make any difference where it's at, boom. You have this microscopic cells, nerve cells, that experience some disruption of their normal life. They send electrical signals up the nerve fibers, called an axon. The nerve fibers are bundled together, and we've talked about different sizes and what they do, and get to a peripheral nerve. That is then transmitted to the spinal cord in the back of your neck. And then that gets transmitted across various synapses. It gets into the brain and eventually gets to the thalamus. And that's where things are sorted out. And if you're kind of playing cards, well, if it's a black card, okay, it's not so bad a pain. If it's a red card, yeah, we've got a lot of pain there. Anyway, all the sorting, the perception of our pain is done in the thalamus. So what do we really have control over? And there's actually a lot more than you would think. Prior to the 1960s, there was 4 or 5 different theories about how pain transmitted through the body and what happened. They didn't take into the psychological aspects of it very much. But there came about the mid-60s, this thing called the gateway control theory of pain, the GCTP, gateway control theory of pain. And this is basically in the spine before it gets to the brain. There's a neurological gate, and it either sends the signals of pain from this gate in the back of your neck, down your spine, to your brain, or it blocks them. And once you started saying, I can do either expedite the signal or I can inhibit the signal, that addressed a lot of the earlier theories' limitations as to what could and couldn't be done. From what they could tell at that time, that was a new revolutionary way of looking at things. It set the standard for the way pain was managed back in the mid 60s. And so what we know today is just because you have pain doesn't mean that it's the same level of pain all the time. And sometimes that pain can be accentuated, increased, or attenuated, calmed down a little bit. But all of that is done in the brain, in the thalamus. So let's look at what control do we really have. So let's look at the process and kind of figure out what our options are. The GCTV, the gate control theory of pain, assumes a neural communication. Our neurons are communicating with each other. And it gets to a gate in the back of our spine, and then the signal has to get through that gate. Well, the gate initially interprets where is the pain coming from and what level of intensity is there. Okay. And then based on that, it kind of deals the cards out. Okay, we're going to send you there. We're going to send you over there. So it connects that pain message, that communication with different nerve fibers. And depending on which fiber it decides to send that communication to the brain is the way the brain is going to perceive that pain. So if it's an A beta, alpha beta, large fiber, you're going to get a different signal than if it's a delta small or the Charlie fibers. Each one has a different rate of speed. Each one has a different level of communication. But the A beta, these are primarily, they're tactile. So you push on something, you can feel things. Sometimes you may have a pain, but you don't actually feel something until you squeeze it. So the alpha beta, the A beta, sends these non-painful tactile signals, touch and pressure, and these go to the gate. And based on which the A beta, the A delta, or the C, that tells the gate what to do. And that is really and truly the first line of defense we have. So if I have an interaction between my large A beta signals at the gate, it's going to have a tendency to inhibit the level of pain. If I have a large amount of C fiber pain coming in, it's going to be like an ambulance. So depending on what pain path is coming through the gate, you're going to have a different level of perception in the brain. But the emotions we have, the psychological impact of that pain, of our environment, will also impact that pain threshold. So our level of attention, the emotion that's going on. If we're distracted, the other day I was working outside in the yard and I just had this really interesting, it was a bug bite, and I didn't have the time. I was watering. I didn't want to take the time and I just kind of ignored it. I got distracted by other things, and I said, oh, well, hey, this really works. So I actually used a purposeful distraction in order to kind of tone down that level of itch and burn I had at the moment. But other cognitive processes can increase or decrease our pain perception. And so the more the body uses the larger fibers, the A delta signals coming in, that has a tendency to automatically inhibit the pain. So that's one of the mechanisms that when the pain gets to the gate, depending on which pain path is coming from, if there's a lot of it that comes from the more tactile one. Let me give you a quick example. Recently, my son was here. We were working outside. We were taking down a lot of cabling from outside of the house with the satellite TV and telephones. And on the chimney, when he was working there up on the roof, he happened to pull on something and a brick fell down. Came down right between myself and my wife. I just happened to catch it as I saw it falling. It caught my wife's middle finger and then landed right on her foot. Boom. I mean, but the pain she had wasn't instantaneous. It was more of a, okay. And then as the next hour took over, that pain increased immensely. However, we treated the pain with ginger, turmeric. And within a 2 or 3 or 4 hour window, The swelling was down a lot. The pain almost disappeared. And for all practical purposes, the pain disappeared just with that one treatment of turmeric. It wasn't one treatment, several treatments of turmeric. But the great control theory of pain explains why our psychological factors affect the pain, and other things that we can do also inhibit or reduce the pain. They have these things called a TENS unit, the transcutaneous electrical nerve stimulation. You put these little probes on the body, you crank the thing up, and it's all of a sudden, and that muscle going back and forth, the electrical stimulation is a very good way to inhibit pain, because at that gateway, it's confusing the real pain with this other electrically induced pain in the muscles. Acupuncture does the same thing. It takes the pain perception away from the main source and kind of muddles it a lot. But this gate control theory of pain, it fuses the pain transmitting signals with non-pain transmitting signals. And when you muddle these things together, they get all cluttered up, and you're really not even aware of where the pain's coming from. And that's why that gate theory works so well. So as we look at our emotional side of things, if we use a positive emotions, if we relax, we reduce that level of pain perception we have as it's going through the gate. Very, very interesting way of looking at it, and it works tremendously well. So we know the gate theory, we can control pain. Anxiety, worry, tension, these all increase our pain path. So anything we can do to minimize depression, anxiety, worry, in other words, stress relief, whatever it may happen to be. There's a lot of relaxation techniques out there, a lot of aspects of happiness. They all combine together to lower our pain threshold. We have the TENS unit, the transsubcutaneous electrical nerve stimulation. There are a lot of those out there, and they work very, very well. But you also have to look at what's causing the pain. If it turns out it's a muscle imbalance because of something you're doing, maybe that TENS unit is going to be a really good way to do it. Other times it may not. So it depends on the cause of the pain as to how effective a TENS unit might be. So it works really, really well when that pain is induced from exercise or for some other muscle issue. My daughter is a deputy sheriff. She carries around a very heavy vest along with a gun and all the rest of that stuff. I mean, you pick it up and you know that she's carrying some weight. Over the course of a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, she's in and out 12-hour shifts, and she comes back, and if she can't get a massage right away, she'll use a TENS unit, and it's remarkable how fast a massage or a TENS unit can help. But let's talk about the things that we really do have control over. I've mentioned before this particular pathway, COX, cyclooxygenase. You have two. You have one which primarily controls the stomach and some other aspects. It's active in the body. It's a good enzyme. It's there all the time. You have COX-2, cyclooxygenase 2. It's dormant. It only gets activated when there's a trauma somewhere in the body. So usually the first thing that gets activated is this thing called AA, arachidonic acid. It comes out of the cell because the cell was damaged. It activates the cyclooxygenase enzyme that's next to it. All of a sudden now the next part of the pain process is you're looking at the chemical, not every single one of them. I just picked out the big ones, the ones we have control over. So the next one goes to prostaglandin. We talked about that last week, the PGE2, that particular one, PGH2, and goes to the PGE2. So you have two prostaglandin in there, the H2 and the E2, and they go to the pain receptors, and that's when everything gets activated. Inflammation happens, swelling happens, redness, soreness, heat, all of the things that you associate with pain, swelling, all that, the normal reaction in the body starts out with arachidonic acid. So we'll talk a little bit later on about what can we do about that. So typically what do? We take an aspirin or a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory, and they inhibit the COX-2. So in other words, you have the arachidonic acid activating the COX, which activates so if I can shut down the AA or the COX, then I have some level of control. I'm not going to get as much swelling or no swelling at all, and I can allow the body to heal itself much faster. But the problem is with COX-2 inhibitors, these NSAIDs, they also affect COX-1. So you end up with a lot of stomach issues. And so they went and they said, well, maybe we can make these things more selective. And so they came out with Celebrex and Vioxx and Bextra and stuff. And they call these COX-2 selective drugs. Well, they were selective, but not nearly as good as they wanted. And then you started having a lot of cardiovascular issues. They still affected COX-1, and in reality, I've been following this for quite a long time because COX-1 and COX-2 is something I kind of fell in love with about maybe 10 years ago, maybe a little bit longer. And I found two molecules that really and truly shut down COX-2 without affecting COX-1. One of them is gamma mangostin, and I'll talk about that. Another one is what I just mentioned, turmeric. So, but we'll talk more about that as we get along. One of the other pathways that pain gets passed along is the thing called the LOX, the lipooxygenase. That is another pathway. Again, now you start everything out with the arachidonic acid, and now all of a sudden you get to this thing, big long word, eicosanoic acid. That's the HETE. And it increases your leukotrienes, in particular the number 4-1, and there's quite a few others. But this leukotriene activates leukocytes, which increase the inflammation. Again, something you don't want, because that inflammation is going to be the part of that inflammatory swelling process, pain, and everything else. So that is another way. So if I can shut down the AA, I can shut down the LOX. Okay. I also have the what they call the cytochrome P450 pathway. Well, in this particular case, the arachidonic acid comes out of the cell that was injured, and it now addresses what we call an EET. And this EET is an epoxy, eicosanoic acid. Again, a long word, but it's a relative of the hydroxy eicosanoic acid. And they both are big inflammers. They modulate much more inflammation than we need, which also increases this endocannabinoid production. So all of these things lead to more pain. Another one, we call this thing the AA, arachidonic acid, to the 2-AG. Well, the 2-AG is arachidonyl glycerol and this anandamide, and they also modulate pain. So now I have several things that all start out at the cell, individual cell. AA is inside the cell. COX is in the bloodstream around, in the tissues around, dormant. So all of a sudden, the arachidonic acid gets activated because of inflammation, because of oxidative stress, because of that damage, and boom, now you have a problem. So what's the first question that I would ask? Well, what inhibits arachidonic acid? Are there any natural inhibitors to it? Well, I went through there and started doing some. Well, omega-3 fatty acids, curcumin, gingerol, resveratrol, quercetin, green tea catechins, boswellia extract, also called Indian frankincense, astaxanthin, vitamin E, all 8 molecules of vitamin E. You got 4 tocopherols and 4 tocotrienols, rosemary, and my favorite, gamma mangostin. So let's just talk about these. What happens when I take omega-3 fatty acid? Salmon is a perfect example of where that comes from. You can also get it in pill form. EPA and DHA are the 2 primary components of omega-3 fatty acids. That's your EPA is the eicosapentaenoic acid, and the DHA, I think, is the docosahexaenoic acid. And those 2 are the ones that are the primary movers of cutting down, inhibiting, stopping arachidonic acid from doing its job. So what it does is it synthesizes, since both of these things are in that category of eicosanoids, it basically takes the arachidonic acid and doesn't allow it to interface very well with the COX-2 enzyme. So the COX-2 enzyme doesn't get proliferated as much, and there's a level of mediation that occurs. Same thing happens with the turmeric, curcumin. Now, curcumin is that yellow spice you usually see in Indian food. Turmeric, however, it's not very bioavailable. You need piperine, black pepper extract, mixed in with that pill form, or if you're taking it as the actual thing from the grocery store, you need to mix in a lot of black pepper with it. But curcumin, as I mentioned earlier, along with gamma mangostin, it really and truly just shuts down COX-2. Without COX-2, you can't get to the next level of inflammation. The swelling doesn't occur. A lot of things just get stopped flat. Well, you also have this thing called NFK2. It's a nuclear factor kappa beta, and it's a transcription factor. When you inhibit it, you're stopping that inflammatory response that's going to happen along with other trauma in the body. We talked about the LOX, the lipo-oxygenase pathway. Well, the curcumin also shuts down the LOX uh, very, very well, just like it shuts down the COX reaction. So all of your pro-inflammatory cytokines and all of the little triggering mechanisms with curcumin work very, very well. My wife was on, I think every 2 hours, she was taking 3 grams of curcumin. Boom. In about 3 hours, no pain, no pain the next day. We went out and walked the day after that. I think we walked 3/4 of a mile, no pain whatsoever. A little bit of swelling there, but not noticeable. Now, she pushes on it. Yeah, she has pain, but otherwise, she doesn't know she has any pain whatsoever. Gingerol, ginger, again, another molecule that can moderate, modulate, downplay the COX-2 enzyme. Resveratrol, wine from grapes. Resveratrol, like curcumin, likes to have that black pepper extract. If you don't have the black pepper, you're only getting maybe 1-2% in the body. You really need 20-30%. You need a lot. And so that black pepper just explodes with that resveratrol or the curcumin. And again, very similar to curcumin, the resveratrol is an inhibitor of the COX-2 and also inhibits that transcription factor of the nuclear factor kappa beta. Okay, quercetin. We get this in onions and garlic and some fruits and veggies. And it shuts down both the COX and the LOX. It shuts down the reactive oxygen species. It shuts down the kinases and transcription factors that are stored in the cell membranes along with the arachidonic acid that says, hey, this thing is, we need to go. And they say, no, not so fast. So the quercetin, again, is a natural sources all over the place, good foods to eat, but it does a marvelous job. And yes, you can also get it in pill form. Green tea, lots of catechins in green tea. The one that's studied the most is the EGCG. That's the epigallocatechin gallate. Very, very, very good, again, at COX-2 inhibiting. And so anything you can do to inhibit COX-2, you're minimizing any level of swelling, pain, redness, soreness, all of that stuff that's associated with some level of trauma in the body. Okay, the boswellia extract. This is Indian frankincense. It's basically a resin from that tree, and you can get it in pill form. Again, it inhibits the COX-2 enzyme very well. Another product from salmon, astaxanthin. This one is another major improvement in the pain control business. It reduces our oxidative stress, which is part of the reason why arachidonic acid gets cranked up to begin with. Otherwise, it's just sitting there in the cell dormant. The stress from some kind of injury is going to say, let's get going, and kicks the AA out. Now that starts the COX and the LOX activities going. But the astaxanthin shuts down that oxidative stress, which shuts down that resultant arachidonic acid reflex. It shuts down the COX and the LOX processes, which in turn really lowers the pro-inflammatory cytokines. And so now you're doing a lot of things that instead of just, I'm only going to work on this, I'm working on all of these things. So it shuts down the transcription factors, it modulates your immune system. Basically, it's a short circuit for the entire pain process. So astaxanthin, great thing to have. We have vitamin E. There's 8 different ones. You have 4 tocopherols, alpha, beta, gamma, and delta. 4 tocotrienols, alpha, beta, gamma, delta. They come from primarily nuts, eggs, seafood, and other things, but they reduce the reactive oxygen species. That's that oxidative stress is going down to the cellular level. So if you can reduce the oxidative stress, you're reducing the arachidonic acid that's coming out that's stored in the cell. So it basically protects the cell from becoming inflamed. Rosemary, also called carnosol or carnosic acid, again, another activator of the COX-2 enzyme, cyclooxygenase 2. My favorite, gamma mangosteen by far. It shuts down COX-2 with absolutely no effect on COX-1. And that's really and truly the important aspect of, you want to have something that shuts down COX-2, but you don't want to have any impact with COX-1. And curcumin and gamma mangosteen are 2 that are absolute. Some of the other ones have a slight effect on COX-1, not as much as your NSAIDs or your COX-2 selective drugs. Something to really be aware of. I an author of several books. No Matter What You Can Do, it talks about our subconscious mind. The Joy of Aging Health talks about the causes of disease and what we can do about it. Longevity Secrets for Healthy Aging talks about the two primary causes of aging, what you can do to accelerate or decelerate the aging process. Understanding Alzheimer's disease, the causes, what's out there, what can you do? It's about 40 articles that I've written over time, and the essential new author's guide on how to write and publish your book for free. So those are the things that I can offer for you there. Next week, we're going to continue on part 4 or 6 on pain control. Other than that, I can be reached at red@redolaughlin.com. That's REDOLAUGHLIN.com. Take care, and I look forward to seeing you all next week. Bye now.